Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The metal corridors of the Cerberus space station were frigid, as if the void itself exhaled icy breath. Blue light flickered unevenly from control panels, pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying machine. Riley Kane moved silently, his combat boots gliding over the steel floor without a sound, each step calculated with lethal precision. His battered armor clung to his frame, warped metal plates reflecting the dim glow, revealing deep scratches, scars from years as a mercenary, from distant colonies to the blood-soaked battlefields of the Xyron Empire. The implant in his wrist hummed faintly, a mechanical whisper like an old friend, interfacing with the station's security systems. 5 minutes should do it, he muttered, his voice low and gravelly, gray eyes scanning the holographic data screen hovering before him. The mission sounded simple: infiltrate the Xyron Empire's data vault, steal the schematics for the energy core, the heart-powering Cerberus, and slip out before the patrols noticed his presence. But Riley, once an elite operative of Earth's military, knew simple in this universe was often a deadly trap, much like the military's euphemism for colony suppressions. Peacekeeping missions. He paused at a junction, pressing his body against the icy metal wall. Cerberus wasn't just a space station, it was a fortress, a symbol of the Xyron Empire's brutal dominion. Endless corridors, watched by hundreds of sensors and combat drones, warned that no one escaped the Empire's gaze. Riley inhaled deeply, the scent of metal and machine oil filling his lungs. His implant, a relic from his days in the neural core, emitted a pulse of green light, hacking into the nearest sensor grid. The data screen flickered, confirming, sensors disabled for 30 seconds. Enough time, he told himself, sprinting down the corridor, his body moving with the precision of a machine forged through countless operations. From the shadows at the corridor's end, a slender figure emerged, as if born from the station's darkness. Kale, an enslaved Sari, halted, her violet eyes blazing like twin flames in the black night. Thin energy cords wrapped around her neck and wrists, glimmering with pale blue light that danced with her every move, like venomous serpents poised to strike. These cords weren't just physical shackles. They symbolized the absolute control the Empire imposed on the Sari people, monitoring every action, every thought. "The vault's ahead," Kale whispered, her voice melodic yet stifled, laced with sharp tension. "Security's active. One mistake, and we're done." She stood there, her lithe frame unyielding, her tattered gray uniform clinging to her skin, revealing faint scars from the cord's punishments. Riley glanced at her, his sharp gaze devoid of the contempt she often received from outsiders, those who saw Sari as tools, not sentient beings. Something in Kale's violet eyes, a spark of defiance, made him pause for a second. "Then don't let me screw up," he replied, his tone dry but not harsh, fingers dancing over his implant. A surge of green light flared, stronger now, disabling a row of sensors along the corridor. He gestured to Kale, and they moved forward, their steps synchronized as if they'd worked together for years, though this was their first meeting. The vault loomed ahead, a vast chamber with glowing data racks like pillars of light piercing the darkness, each holding thousands of the Empire's secrets. Kale approached a terminal, her slender fingers flying over the holographic keyboard with astonishing speed, but each motion made the energy cords hiss in warning, their pale blue glow turning a searing red. She flinched, an involuntary reflex, but her eyes remained focused. "The core schematics are in Delta Sector," she said, her voice trembling slightly as the cords tightened, punishing her for daring to touch what wasn't hers. Riley stood beside her, gripping his plasma pistol, eyes fixed on the main door. "Hurry," he said, his voice low but not pressing, as if he understood added pressure would only slow her. Kale nodded, her gaze desperate. "If I fail, my family pays the price," she whispered, as if to herself. Her words stopped Riley cold. He'd seen countless slaves in the colonies, but few carried a fire in their eyes like Kale, despite being chained in body and soul. A sudden, sharp clang echoed from the door, the heavy tread of mechanized armor. An Xyron guard stepped in, towering like a killing machine, its mechanical eyes scanning the room with dizzying speed. "Intruders!" it roared, its metallic voice reverberating, its hand activating Kale's energy cords. She collapsed instantly, the cords blazing red, scorching her flesh, her lips clenched to stifle a scream. Riley reacted on instinct, lunging with the speed of a trained warrior, his implant-enhanced fist shattering the guard's visor. The blow dropped the guard before it could fire. "Get up!" he shouted, pulling Kale behind a data rack, shielding her from the auxiliary sensor's sweeping lights. As he dragged her, his implant brushed against the energy cord on her wrist. Something strange happened. The cord flickered, its red glow shifting to pale green, then fading entirely, the mechanical hum silenced. Kale looked up, her violet eyes wide with shock and suspicion. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling, as if unable to believe the fleeting taste of freedom. Riley frowned, checking his implant, its small screen flashing unfamiliar data. "No idea," he said, his tone low but sharp. "But it seems my toy doesn't like theirs." He kept his hand on her wrist a moment longer, feeling a strange energy pulse through the implant, as if it were communicating with her cords. Before they could process it, alarms blared, a piercing wail tearing through the silence. Red light bathed the vault, data racks flashing wildly. Riley yanked Kale down, dodging a laser from a patrol drone that materialized on the ceiling. "Time's up," he growled, firing a plasma shot that exploded the drone in a shower of fire. Kale, still dazed, gripped his hand, her eyes blazing with resolve. "The schematics are here," she said, pointing to the terminal. "But we've got seconds before the patrol arrives." Riley nodded, shoving her toward the console. "Do it. I'll handle them." He turned, plasma pistol glowing, ready to face the storm descending upon them, while Kale threw herself into her own battle, against the machine and the chains that bound her. Alarms screamed through Cerberus, their shrill wails like knives slashing the air, mingling with the crimson light that stained the metal corridors like flowing blood. Riley, Kane, and Kale raced through narrow passages, the heavy footsteps of Xyron guards echoing behind them, closing in with every second. Riley's tattered armor clattered, each sprint a battle against a body exhausted from the tense minutes in the vault. His wrist implant buzzed incessantly, emitting faint green pulses that interfered with the energy cords around Kale's neck and wrists. But the interference was fleeting. Whenever he let go for too long, the cords flared, tightening like invisible blades, making Kale gasp, her face contorted in pain. "Engineering bay, now!" Kale panted, her voice shaky but sharp, pointing to a narrow path descending to the station's lower levels. "The core schematics are there. If we destroy the core, we can take this station down." Riley skidded to a halt, his boots sliding on the steel floor, his cold gray eyes locking onto Kale's blazing violet ones. "Destroy it?" he asked, his voice low but sharp as a blade. "I was hired to steal the schematics, not blow up a damn space station." He tilted his head, the red alarm light illuminating his angular face, revealing a faint scar along his jaw, a memento from a mission that nearly killed him. Kale grabbed his arm, her slender fingers gripping tightly despite the cord's warning hiss. "This station is the heart of Xyron's fleet," she said, her eyes burning, as if the fire within her could incinerate the universe. "As long as it stands, my people will remain slaves. Don't you get it? Every day, these cords erode us, turning us into tools, not living beings." Her unwavering resolve made Riley pause. He'd been running for too long, from Earth's military, from memories of colonies slaughtered in the name of stability, from the man he once was. Years as a mercenary had taught him survival was the only priority, but Kale, shackled in body and soul, carried a defiant fire he couldn't ignore. He took a deep breath, the smell of metal and smoke filling his lungs. "All right," he said, squeezing her hand, feeling the faint warmth of her skin through the cold energy cords. "But you have to trust me. If we do this, there's no going back." Kale nodded, a fragile spark of hope in her eyes, and they charged down the corridor, dodging laser blasts from patrol drones streaking overhead. The engineering bay loomed ahead, a vast space like the belly of a monstrous beast, with massive pipes lining the walls, hissing with heat and mechanical whines. At its center, the energy core glowed brilliantly, a captive sun trapped in a metal cage, its blue-white light casting shimmering reflections on the surrounding panels. Kale rushed to the main console, her fingers dancing over the holographic display, but each movement made the cords screech, their red glow flaring as if to consume her. Riley stood guard, plasma pistol gripped tightly, eyes scanning the room. "How long?" he asked, his voice taut as a wire. 3 minutes, Kale replied, her voice trembling but focused. "If I input the right codes, we can overload the core." But before she could continue, a sharp clang echoed from a side door, metal striking metal, followed by a cold voice cutting through the air. "Human and sorry, an odd pair." Commander Varkes, a towering Xyron with blood-red mechanical eyes, stepped from the shadows, his black armor glinting under the core's light. The energy weapon in his hand emitted a deadly hum, aimed at Riley. "You think you can destroy my masterpiece, Riley Kane?" Varkes growled, his metallic voice echoing with the contempt of a born ruler. He pressed a button on his wrist, and Kale's cords blazed, their red light searing her flesh, dragging her to the floor, her body convulsing in agony. Riley lunged, swift as a predator, his wrist implant flaring with brilliant green light. He touched the cord on Kale's neck, and a powerful electric pulse surged, dimming the cord, its red glow shifting to pale green before fading entirely. Kale cried out, not in pain but in awe. She felt a fleeting moment of freedom, as if breathing unshackled air for the first time. "Hold on to me," she whispered, clutching his hand, her violet eyes shimmering with resolve and astonishment. Riley pulled her up, standing between her and Varkes, his plasma pistol aimed at the Xyron. "You want a game, Xyron? Let's play," he snarled, his voice defiant, though his eyes scanned the room for an escape. Varkes laughed coldly, a sound like metal scraping stone. "You understand nothing, human. Cerberus is more than a station. It's the key to the Empire's control of this galaxy." He raised a hand, and a squad of Xyron guards flooded in from side doors, their energy weapons glowing like deadly torches. But before Riley and Kale could react, the energy core at the bay's center shuddered violently, its blue-white light flickering erratically, as if triggered by an external force. Varkes turned, his mechanical eyes flashing rare surprise. "Impossible," he muttered, checking his wrist device. Then he faced Riley, his sinister grin returning. "You're not the only one who wants Cerberus to fall. Another player is in this game, and you're just a pawn." Before Riley could respond, a cataclysmic explosion rocked the engineering bay, its roar like thunder, shattering pipes and spraying heat and debris. The floor cracked, metal plates buckling, dragging Riley, Kale, and Varkes into a chasm plunging into the station's depths. Riley held Kale tightly, shielding her from flying shards with his body. As darkness swallowed them, he felt her hand grip his, their racing heartbeats mingling with the roar of Cerberus collapsing. "At this rate, we won't make it through the night," he muttered, but his eyes still burned with defiance. Kale, despite her pain, whispered back, "Then we live to tear this place apart." In the darkness, a spark from Riley's implant flared, a tiny flame challenging the universe. Darkness engulfed every sense, leaving only the frantic thud of Riley's heart blending with Kale's faint breaths in his arms. The wreckage of Cerberus roared around them, like a dying beast, dragging his consciousness into a frigid abyss. Fragmented memories flashed, a burning colony, the laughter of old comrades, and Kale's violet eyes, blazing like an unquenchable flame. His wrist implant hummed softly, its pale green light flickering, as if fighting to keep him from the void. "She needs me," he murmured, his voice fading in the haze, unsure if he spoke to himself or the cosmos. A distant explosion rumbled, shaking his body, then all fell silent, leaving only the scent of scorched metal and the faint warmth of Kale's hand clutching his. Riley awoke in an abandoned cargo bay, his body aching as if crushed, dried blood caking his forehead. The air was thick with the stench of burnt metal and machine oil, mixed with the distant wail of alarms echoing through thick steel walls. Faint light from a damaged control panel illuminated the surrounding debris, casting twisted shadows like lurking monsters. Kale lay beside him, her slender frame curled tightly, the energy cords on her neck and wrists dim but still glowing, pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying creature. Her breaths were shallow, her cracked lips trembling as she struggled to inhale. Riley crawled to her, each movement making his bones groan in protest. "Kale!" he called, his voice hoarse, touching her shoulder. The cords hissed, but as his implant grazed them, their light faded, the hum silencing. Kale's eyes fluttered open, her violet gaze shimmering, clouded with pain but lit by a spark of hope. "We're alive," she whispered, struggling to sit, clutching her wrist where the cords had burned her. Riley checked his implant, its small screen flashing chaotic data, partially damaged from the explosion, but still able to disrupt Kale's cords when he touched her. "What did Varkis mean about another player?" he asked, his voice low but sharp, pulling her to her feet. The debris around them trembled slightly, as if Cerberus were in its death throes. Kale shook her head, her black hair matted with dust and blood. "I don't know," she replied, her voice shaky but resolute. "But if someone else wants Cerberus gone, they're not our friends. No one in this universe acts without a motive." Her words made Riley frown. He'd seen tangled conspiracies in Earth's colonies, traitors, secret alliances, and nameless deaths. Cerberus, with its energy core, was clearly the heart of a game far bigger than he'd imagined. They climbed through the wreckage, sharp metal scraps cutting their hands, the alarms growing closer, like a drumbeat heralding death. The corridor ahead had partially collapsed, exposing sparking cables and pipes spewing heat. Riley led, plasma pistol gripped tightly, eyes scanning every shadow. Kale followed closely, her steps light but deliberate, though the cords tightened whenever she moved too fast. They stopped at a massive energy cage holding a group of Tsari, about a dozen, from children to elders, their gaunt frames and hollow eyes still flickering with hope at the sight of Kale. An elderly Tsari with white hair stepped to the cage's edge, his violet eyes bright as he looked at her. "You are Kale, daughter of Xyron," he said, his voice deep and certain, as if stating an undeniable truth. Kale froze, stepping back, her hand instinctively touching the cord on her neck. "My father died in a mining explosion," she said, her voice trembling, her gaze wavering between doubt and pain. "What are you talking about?" The elder Zorith gave a sad smile, the smile of one who'd seen too much loss. "Xyron was no miner. He was the greatest scientist of the Tsari, creator of the first energy core for the Empire. But they killed him to hide a secret. This core isn't just a power source, it's a weapon capable of obliterating an entire star system." The revelation hit like a blow, staggering Riley and Kale. Cerberus wasn't just the Empire's stronghold, it was a cosmic bomb, a blade poised over every planet in the galaxy. Riley tightened his grip on his pistol, his eyes darkening. "So why keep it here, in the middle of nowhere?" Zorith met his gaze, his eyes sharp. "Because only the Tsari know how to operate it. And only the Tsari can destroy it." Riley hacked the energy cage with his implant, a burst of green light dissolving it. The Tsari rushed out, embracing Kale, whispering thanks in their melodic tongue. But their brief joy shattered as a squad of Xyron guards appeared, led by Nyx, a female warrior with a gleaming cybernetic arm. Her sleek armor hugged her form, her blue mechanical eyes scanning the group with deadly precision. She raised a hand, halting the guards. "Leave this place, human," Nyx said, her voice icy, addressing Riley. "Varkis isn't the real enemy. A greater force pulls the strings, and you're just a puppet." Riley frowned, his plasma pistol rising slightly, but he didn't fire. Something in Nyx's tone, not a threat, but a warning, held him back. Before he could question her, Nyx deployed a smoke grenade, white fog swallowing her and the guards, leaving the corridor empty. Kale gripped Riley's hand, her eyes resolute despite her trembling body. "Whoever the enemy is, we have to destroy the core before it's used," she said, her voice firm, as if the truth about her father had ignited a new fire. Riley nodded, leading the Tsari through the corridors, Zora staying close to Kale, whispering memories of Xyron, nights spent working in secret, dreaming of a free Tsari. but a deafening explosion rocked the station. Through a corridor window, a strange ship appeared, its angular design unmarked by Xyron insignia, firing red energy beams into Cerberus. A nearby door blew open, air pressure plummeting, sucking everything toward space. Riley held Kale tightly, anchoring her in a safe corner, his strength keeping her from being pulled out. Zora shouted, guiding the Tsari behind crates, but a Tsari child was dragged toward the void. Riley lunged, grabbing the child's hand, pulling them back just as the emergency door sealed shut. "Thank you," Zorath whispered, clutching the child, but Riley only nodded, his eyes darkening. "We can't get back to the engineering bay," he said, his voice tense, checking his implant. "We need another way." Kale, gasping, pointed to a side corridor, the faint glow of her cords lighting the path. "The station has a secondary control hub. If we reach it, I can trigger the core remotely." They ran, the Tsari following, but a mechanical roar shook the floor. A colossal combat drone, 3 times a man's height, emerged from the shadows, its armored shell gleaming, its red mechanical eyes locking onto them. "It's activated by that ship," Kale whispered, her voice trembling but sharp. Riley raised his plasma pistol, his eyes flashing defiance. "Then let's give it a fight to remember." The battle with the combat drone was a nightmare made flesh, a storm of metal and fire swallowing the narrow corridors of Cerberus. Riley fired relentlessly with his plasma pistol, each shot screeching through the air, but the drone's armor, a towering steel monolith 3 times a man's height, was nearly impervious, leaving only faint scorch marks. Its red mechanical eyes locked onto him, emitting a deadly hum as twin energy cannons on its shoulders began to charge. Riley rolled aside, dodging a laser that sliced the steel floor in 2, smoke billowing from the gash. Kale, her body weakened by the energy cord's relentless grip, surged forward, her violet eyes blazing with resolve. She grabbed a jagged metal rod from the debris, thrusting it with all her strength into a mechanical joint on the drone's leg. The rod snapped, but the strike staggered the drone, exposing a glimmering energy core on its flank. "Shoot it!" Kale shouted, stumbling back as the cords around her neck flared red, forcing her to her knees. Riley seized the moment, aiming at the core and firing a precise plasma shot. The drone erupted in a fireball, the shockwave hurling them both backward, collapsing part of the corridor in a chaos of dust and debris. Riley pulled Kale to her feet, his ears still ringing from the blast. "You okay?" he asked, his voice hoarse, touching her shoulder. The cords hissed, but his implant flashed, dimming their red glow. Kale nodded, her breaths ragged but her gaze sharp. Through the wreckage, Zoratha's voice rang out, faint but resolute. "We'll find another way," he yelled, leading the Tsari group into a side passage. Riley watched them go, his heart heavy. Those frail souls had little chance if Cerberus kept crumbling. "We've got to move," Kale whispered, gripping his hand, urging him onward. They raced through smoke-filled corridors, dodging sparks from severed cables and falling metal panels. Each step was a battle against time, against Cerberus, and against the invisible chains binding them. They reached the secondary control hub, a vast chamber bathed in pale blue light from dozens of flickering holographic screens. The consoles hummed faintly, as if sensing the energy core screaming miles away. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and hot metal, the low drone of machinery echoing like the heartbeat of a colossal beast. Kale rushed to the main console, her fingers flying over the holographic display, but the cords tightened, their red glow searing her flesh, forcing her to bite her lip until it bled to stifle a moan. Riley stood beside her, touching her shoulder, his implant flaring to dim the cords. "You've got this," he said, his voice low but brimming with confidence, his gray eyes locked on hers, as if pouring strength into her with every word. Kale nodded, her violet eyes igniting with determination, though her body trembled with exhaustion. She closed her eyes, memories surging, nights when her father, Theron, sat with her in their small room on the Tsari homeworld, teaching her about quantum energy, complex formulas she'd once thought useless. "One day, Kale," he'd said, his voice deep and warm, "you'll use this knowledge to break the chains." She opened her eyes, her fingers moving faster, inputting codes with the precision of someone born for this moment. "Father prepared me for this," she whispered, her voice trembling but steadfast, completing the final sequence. Far away, the energy core began to shudder, a low roar echoing through Cerberus, blinding white light spilling through the windows, as if a sun were exploding in the station's heart. But before hope could ignite, a cold voice sliced through the air. "You can't stop it!" Commander Varkes reappeared, his black armor gleaming, leading a squad of Xyron soldiers, their energy weapons blazing like deadly torches. His red mechanical eyes fixed on Riley, a sinister sneer radiating contempt. "Cerberus is the destiny of this galaxy, and you, human, are a mere stain." He raised a hand, and an energy bolt shot out, striking Zorith in the chest as he staggered in from a side passage, leading the Tsari. The elder fell, purple blood pooling on the floor, his fading eyes still on Kale. "You are our hope," he whispered, his breaths faltering, then still. Kale screamed, a cry of anguish tearing through the room, her body shaking, but her hands clung to the console, finishing the final code. The energy core roared ferociously, white light swallowing everything, shaking the room. Riley lunged, pulling Kale from the console as holographic screens exploded, sparks flying. "We've got to go!" he shouted, dragging her toward an escape pod in the corner. Varkes roared, firing wildly, but Riley shielded her, a bolt grazing his shoulder, leaving a burning scar. He shoved Kale into the pod, slamming the door before she could protest. "Stay there!" he growled, turning to face Varkes, but the floor bucked violently, throwing him into the pod with her. The door locked, and the pod launched from Cerberus, hurtling into the black void. In the cramped escape pod, Riley noticed Kale's energy cords had vanished, leaving faint scars on her skin. "How?" he asked, his voice rough, his eyes flickering between awe and concern. Kale looked at him, tears blurring her eyes, but a faint smile curved her lips. "My father embedded a liberation code in me," she said, her voice trembling. "When the core overloaded, it activated, freeing me, and maybe my entire people." Riley took her hand, feeling the warmth of her unchained skin, a strange sensation swelling in him. Hope, something he thought he'd lost long ago. But their fleeting joy shattered as the pod shook violently. Through the small window, a massive ship loomed, its angular design unmarked by Xyron insignia but radiating lethal menace. An invisible force pulled the pod into the ship's belly, defying Riley's attempts to activate the controls. A cold voice crackled through the speakers, sharp as a blade cutting the darkness. "Welcome, Riley Kane. We are the Black Star Alliance. Cerberus is ours." Riley tightened his grip on Kale's hand, his eyes flashing defiance. "Who are they?" Kale whispered, her voice trembling but sharp. Riley shook his head, but deep down, he knew, the game had just grown larger, and they'd stepped into a new battlefield, where the enemy wasn't just Xyron but a shadowy force with the power to manipulate the cosmos. The escape pod shuddered as an invisible force dragged it into the belly of the Black Star warship, a colossal machine hovering in the dark void, its angular hull like a blade slicing through starlight. Riley and Kale were yanked from the pod, their hands bound by new energy cords, colder and sharper than those that once chained Kale on Cerberus. The warship's corridors were vast, their glossy black metal walls reflecting the cold white light from ceiling strips, evoking the sensation of walking into the maw of a living monster. Alliance guards, clad in gray armor with emotionless masks, escorted them through automated doors, each opening with a mechanical hiss. Riley kept Kale close, his gray eyes scanning every corner, memorizing details, exits, weapons, weaknesses. Kale, freshly freed from Xyron's cords, stood tall, her violet eyes blazing with defiance, though Riley felt her hand tremble slightly as it gripped his. They were led into a sprawling command chamber, its center dominated by a glowing holographic table displaying a galactic map, hundreds of red dots blinking, Xyron stations and fleets. Commander Elias emerged from the shadows, a human with a gaunt face, his ice blue eyes cold as frost, his faint smile carrying the false charm of a seasoned manipulator. "Riley Kane," he said, his voice low but cutting. "Once the sharpest blade of the Black Star Alliance. His words hit like a fist, making Riley freeze, his eyes darkening. "You're talking nonsense," he growled, but unease churned in his chest. Elias chuckled softly, gesturing to a holographic screen that flickered to life, showing Riley in Alliance armor, standing beside a Tsari woman, Lyra, before she was consumed in an explosion. "We hired you to steal the energy core schematics from Cerberus," Elias continued. "But you failed, lost Lyra, and your memories were erased to keep our secrets. Now you've destroyed Cerberus, but the liberation code in her," he pointed at Kale, his gaze icy, "is what we need to control the Tsari and crush Xyron." Kale gripped Riley's hand tightly, her body tensing with fear but her voice razor-sharp. "I belong to no one," she said, her violet eyes meeting Elias's without flinching. Riley stepped forward, shielding her, his gaze blazing with challenge. "Touch her, and you'll regret it," he snarled, his voice low but menacing, like a beast cornered. Elias merely smiled, signaling the guards. "Lock them up. We'll extract the code one way or another." The guards shoved Riley and Kale into a small cell, its seamless steel walls lit by harsh white light from the ceiling. The door slammed shut, leaving them in silence, broken only by the faint hum of the new cords binding their hands. In the cell, Kale sat close to Riley, touching his wrist implant, not to hack, but as if seeking comfort. Suddenly, the implant flared, and a locked memory surged in Riley's mind, images of Lyra, the Tsari he'd loved, her violet eyes like Kale's, her warm smile before the Alliance killed her to force his service. The memory was a knife, twisting doubt into his core. "Who am I, Kale?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "If I worked for them, I'm no better than the enemy." Kale took his hand, her fingers interlocking tightly, her gaze unwavering. "Whoever you were, you're the one who saved me, who saved my people. That's the truth I believe." Her words were a flame, warming the darkness, pulling him back from the abyss. They plotted their escape, Riley using his implant to hack the cords binding their hands, a burst of green light dissolving them. He began hacking the cell door, but before he finished, it swung open. Nyx, the Xyron warrior with a cybernetic arm, stood there, her blue eyes sharp but not hostile. "I'm not loyal to Varkes or Elias," she said, her voice low but firm. "I want the Empire to fall, but the Alliance is worse. They'll turn the Tsari into weapons, not slaves." Riley frowned, gripping a plasma pistol taken from a guard, but he didn't fire. Nyx led them through the warship's hidden corridors, evading cameras and patrols, to an armory bathed in red light from energy canisters. But an Alliance squad spotted them, and a firefight erupted. Riley shot with deadly accuracy, dropping 2 soldiers before they could react, while Kale wielded a metal rod as a weapon, stabbing into a guard's armor joint. Nyx fought like a tempest, her cybernetic arm crushing enemy weapons, but the soldiers' numbers overwhelmed them. They dove into a shuttle in the armory, Nyx firing up the engines, but Elias appeared on a screen, his sneer chilling. "You can't run, Riley," he said, activating a tracker in Riley's implant. Agony like an electric shock tore through Riley, dropping him to his knees, blood dripping from his nose. Kale, recalling her father's codes, touched the implant, her fingers moving swiftly, whispering Darren's formulas. A green flash erupted, disabling the tracker, and Riley gasped, his eyes shining with gratitude. The shuttle shot into space, but an Alliance fleet pursued, red energy beams slicing through the dark. In a desperate moment, Nyx turned to Riley, her eyes softening, revealing deep pain. "I'm Lyra's sister," she said, her voice trembling. "I swore to kill you, but I see you and Kale doing what she always dreamed of, freeing us." Before Riley could respond, Nyx input new coordinates, steering the shuttle into a space minefield. "Get out and finish this," she said, shoving Riley and Kale into an auxiliary escape pod. The shuttle exploded in the minefield, engulfing the Alliance fleet in a sea of fire, Nyx with it. Riley and Kale's pod hurtled away, landing on a desolate planet, its rocky, dusty surface lit by a distant sun's faint glow. Riley held Kale, his heart heavy with Nyx's sacrifice, but his eyes burned with resolve. "We're not done," he whispered. Kale nodded, her hand entwined with his, ready to face any enemy lurking in the cosmic dark. In the escape pod drifting through the void, Riley sat motionless, his gray eyes clouded as they stared into the endless dark beyond the small window. Nyx's sacrifice, Lyra's sister, who once swore to kill him, twisted like a blade in his chest. She gave us a chance, he whispered, his voice hoarse, as if speaking to himself. Kale, pressed close, touched his hand, her fingers trembling slightly. Nyx saw what Lyra saw in you, she said, her melodic voice steady, her violet eyes shimmering with pain and resolve. We can't let her sacrifice be in vain. A piercing screech rang out as the pod grazed the atmosphere, shaking violently, pulling them from the darkness of space into the faint light of an alien world. Dust swirled thickly, but through the haze, a new spark of hope emerged, silhouettes of Tsari, their eyes blazing, waiting for them. The pod landed with a grating shriek on the desolate planet's surface, dust billowing, obscuring the weak glow of a distant sun. Riley and Kale stepped out, the dry, frigid air stinging their lungs, carrying the scent of scorched earth and metal. The landscape was an endless stone desert, jagged rock spires rising like the spine of a long-dead beast. Yet amid the desolation, a band of Tsari rebels appeared, wielding crude weapons but with eyes burning with determination. Leading them was Cirrus, a tall Tsari woman with silver-purple hair tied tightly, her glowing eyes radiating the aura of a warrior born to command. Your liberation code could save our entire species, Cirrus said, her voice deep and resonant, gazing at Kale with rare reverence. She guided them through narrow stone crevices to an ancient Tsari sanctuary hidden deep in the desert, where massive stone pillars glowed faintly, etched with quantum runes shimmering like stars. The sanctuary was a marvel, a vast space beneath a natural dome, blue light from the pillars illuminating weathered stone walls that chronicled Tsari history, a people once free, before the Xyron Empire bound them with energy cords. At the center, a circular stone platform hovered, encircled by swirling energy rings, humming softly like the planet's heartbeat. Cirrus explained. This quantum technology can amplify the liberation code, broadcasting a signal to every Xyron station, shattering the energy cords of our entire people. But she frowned, pointing to cracks in the platform. It's damaged from Xyron's attacks. Only the connection between your implant. She looked at Riley. And the code in her. She turned to Kale. Can activate it. As the rebels prepared, Riley pulled Kale to a quiet corner of the sanctuary, where faint pillar light bathed her face, making her violet eyes gleam. He took a deep breath, his voice low but earnest. I was once Earth's elite operative, he said, his gaze distant, revisiting painful memories. But I betrayed them when I saw the military crush colonies, killing innocents to cling to power. I lived as a mercenary, thinking nothing was worth fighting for. But you, Kale, you make me want to stop running. He touched her cheek, his fingers trembling, feeling the warmth of her unchained skin. Kale met his gaze, tears glistening, then leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to his lips, a fleeting but fierce moment, sealing their bond. We'll fight together, she whispered, her hand entwining with his. They stepped onto the platform, Riley's hand on Kale's shoulder, Kale touching his implant. As the system activated, excruciating pain surged through them, as if their bodies were torn apart by quantum energy. Memories of therein flashed in Kale's mind, nights her father worked in secret, embedding the liberation code in her, knowing he wouldn't live to see Tsari free. You are our flame, he'd said, and now Kale felt that flame burning in her veins. Riley's implant screeched, its green light merging with Kale's code, forming a vortex of energy around the platform. But before the signal could complete, a deafening explosion rocked the sanctuary. Through stone crevices, a Black Star Alliance fleet appeared, led by Elias, his gaunt face glaring from a massive holographic screen. Surrender the liberation code, or this planet becomes ash, he roared. Cirrus led the Tsari rebels in fierce combat, using crude weapons and guerrilla tactics against the Alliance troops storming the desert. Explosions and screams echoed, black smoke rising from the sands. Inside the sanctuary, Riley and Kale held on, their bodies ravaged, blood trickling from noses and ears as the energy overloaded. The signal surged, a blue burst erupting from the platform, shooting into space. Live feeds on the stone walls showed Sari across the galaxy tearing off energy cords, embracing in joy, their cries of freedom resounding. Kale wept, not from pain but because her father's dream had come true. But Elias breached the sanctuary, leading an elite squad, their energy weapons blazing. "You think you can win?" he snarled, firing at the platform. Riley shoved Kale aside, taking the blast to his chest, red blood pooling on his tattered armor. "No!" Kale screamed, pulling him back, her body trembling but her eyes blazing with resolve. She touched Riley's implant, whispering Theron's final code, a sequence she'd heard in dreams. The platform's quantum energy flared, unleashing an invisible shockwave that paralyzed Elias and his troops, dropping them lifelessly. Riley, gravely wounded, gripped Kale's hand, a faint smile on his bloodied lips. "We did it," he whispered, his voice rough but proud. Kale sobbed, holding him tightly, feeling his faint heartbeat blend with the sanctuary's hum. "Together," she replied, tears falling on his face. Cirrus burst in, leading rebel Tsari to bind Elias and the Alliance soldiers. Outside, the Alliance fleet retreated, unable to counter the liberation signal spreading galaxy-wide. Kale knelt beside Riley, still clutching his hand, whispering Tsari prayers. The sanctuary trembled one last time, its blue light fading, leaving a sacred silence. The signal was complete, the Tsarias energy cords dissolved across the universe, but Riley lay there, his breath shallow, his eyes still flickering with defiance. Kale kissed his forehead, her heart heavy yet brimming with hope. They'd ignited the flame of freedom, and whatever the cost, they'd made history. In the dimness of the medical tent, Kale knelt beside Riley, clutching his hand, whispering Tsari prayers, their melodic cadence like a desert wind's song. Ancient sanctuary technology, hovering energy orbs emitting soft blue light, hummed faintly, channeling quantum energy into his broken body. The wound on Riley's chest, where Elias's blast had torn through, slowly closed, but his breaths remained faint, a flickering flame before a storm. "Don't leave me," Kale whispered, tears streaming, each drop falling onto his hand like a vow. Through the tent's fabric slits, the first golden rays of dawn slipped in, bathing Riley's weathered face, as if the planet itself called him back. Cheers from the valley echoed, carrying the warmth of victory, pulling his consciousness from the dark. Dawn broke over the desolate planet, golden light piercing the shattered stone pillars of the Tsari sanctuary, bathing the rocky desert in a promise of rebirth. The first rays glinted off battle debris, turning twisted metal into gems amid the dust. The air, no longer harsh and cold, carried the warmth of hope, mingling with the gentle wind singing through stone crevices. In a makeshift medical tent near the sanctuary's edge, Riley Kane awoke, his body aching but alive, saved by ancient Tsari healing technology. Faint light from a hovering energy orb illuminated his face, highlighting an old scar and new lines, marks of a man who'd fought the universe and himself. Kale sat beside him, her black hair gleaming in the early sun, her violet eyes like twin jewels, both tender and resolute. "You're stubborn as hell," she said, her melodic voice laced with teasing, but her eyes glistened as he opened his. Riley gave a weak smile, his hand seeking hers, fingers intertwining, feeling the warmth of her unchained skin. "And you're why I stayed," he replied, his voice rough but sincere, his gray eyes locked on hers, as if she were the beacon through his darkest nights. Kale leaned down, pressing a soft kiss to his forehead, a small gesture holding a universe of feeling. In that moment, in the simple medical tent, they bore witness to their shared journey, from Cerberus's cold corridors to this blazing desert, from doubt to undying love. Cirrus entered, her battle armor glinting in the sunlight, her strong face softened by a rare smile. "The Xyron Empire has collapsed," she announced, her voice ringing with pride. "Your liberation signal spread across the galaxy. Tsari on every planet tore off their energy cords, rising against Xyron. Their stations fell, their fleets scattered, their rulers now fugitives." She paused, looking at Kale with profound respect. You, daughter of Theron, ignited the flame of freedom your father dreamed of. Kale bowed her head, tears falling, not from sorrow but because her father's, and her people's, dream had come true. Cirrus continued, her voice lower but steady. The Black Star Alliance, without Elias, has retreated to regroup. They're no immediate threat, but they'll return. The universe is shifting, and the Tsari must be ready. She turned to Riley, her gaze sharp but not hostile. And you, human, fought for us. You belong here, if you choose to stay. Riley nodded, his hands still clasped with Kale's. Once a rootless wanderer, he'd found purpose beyond himself beside Kale and the Tsari. Outside the tent, a crowd of Tsari gathered, no longer trembling slaves but warriors of the future, raising the symbol of freedom, a shattered circle of light etched on purple flags fluttering in the desert wind. Cheers rose, their melodic cadence a victory anthem, as Kale was hailed as Theron's daughter, the hero who carried the liberation code in her blood. A group of Tsari elders, clad in shimmering robes, approached, inviting her to lead their people into a new era. Kale stood tall, golden light bathing her slender yet powerful frame, her violet eyes blazing. She looked at Riley, her gaze unwavering, as if the universe held only them. I'll lead, she said, her voice echoing through the crowd. But not alone. She extended her hand, fingers trembling but resolute. Riley Kane, will you stand with me? Riley took her hand, fingers locking tightly, feeling her strength flow into him. Always, he replied, his voice deep and certain, a rare smile lighting his weathered face. The Tsari erupted in cheers, applause blending with the wind, as if the planet itself rejoiced. They stepped from the sanctuary, golden sunlight embracing them, glinting off Riley's tattered armor and Kale's simple purple cloak. Before them, the sky blazed, where Tsari ships, once tools of the Empire, now soared, bearing freedom's flag, no longer slaves but warriors of a new age. The ships streaked past, leaving purple trails across the sky, like stars born from ashes. Riley and Kale stood on a high stone ridge, gazing at the valley where Tsari rebuilt their lives, tents rising, children laughing, engineers repairing the sanctuary's ancient technology. Kale turned to Riley, her eyes sparkling. We broke the chains, she said, but the universe holds more challenges. Are you afraid? Riley chuckled, pulling her into his arms, feeling her heartbeat merge with his. Afraid? With you beside me, I'd take on the whole galaxy. They embraced under the sunlight, their shadows blending on the ground, a human and a Tsari bound by love and the revolutionary flame that lit the cosmos. Far above, a new star flared in the daylight sky, blazing brightly, a promise of a free era. Tsari across the galaxy, from distant planets to tiny colonies, looked up at that star, knowing they were no longer alone. News of the Xyron Empire's fall spread, inspiring other peoples to rise against their oppressors. Riley and Kale, on their stone ridge, felt the weight of the future but also the joy of victory. They changed the universe, not through their strength alone, but through unity, between human and Tsari, past and future. As the sunlight faded, giving way to a vibrant purple sky, they descended to the valley, hand in hand, ready to lead the Tsari into a world where freedom was not just a dream, but reality.